Thank you for joining us to learn about advanced care planning and healthcare consent in Ontario. This presentation was put together by the Conversations Worth Having team, the Advanced Care Planning Program for Waterloo Wellington. As we're going throughout the presentation, I'd like you to consider the following things. I'd like you to imagine that you're in the hospital and you're too ill or hurt to speak for yourself. Do you know who would make your healthcare decisions for you? And a follow-up to that is, do they know that they are going to make your healthcare decisions for you? And do you think they'll be able to make your healthcare decisions the way you would make them if you could talk? On the other hand, I'd like you to imagine that your spouse or your partner or your mom or your dad has had a stroke and is unable to communicate with the doctors. Would you know what healthcare they would want or not want? You might have to be their substitute decision maker for healthcare. This is what advanced care planning is. It's about planning for a time when we are not mentally capable of making our own healthcare decisions. And ideally, this happens long before a medical crisis occurs. To put it into context, in Ontario, before providing us any treatment, healthcare providers must get our permission. This is called informed consent. Ideally, the consent comes from us as the patient. After all, it is about our health care. However, there may be a time when we are not mentally capable of making our own health care decisions. This is when the healthcare provider turns to our substitute decision maker, who is the person or people who are legally authorized to make our healthcare decisions for us. There's one situation in which healthcare providers do not need to get consent before providing us treatment, and that is in an emergency. So what is advanced care planning in Ontario? It's literally two things. One, it's figuring out who is going to make your healthcare decisions for you in case you can't make them for yourself. This is called your substitute decision maker. And step two of advanced care planning, which is the piece that people either forget to do or they actively avoid, is having conversations with your substitute decision maker and other loved ones about what is important to you, so that they can step into your shoes and make your healthcare decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. It's important to note that advanced care planning and healthcare consent is very different in Ontario than the rest of Canada and the United States. When looking at information, please make sure it's from Ontario. So step one, identifying your substitute decision maker. In Ontario, there are two ways to identify your SDM, your substitute decision maker. The first way is by completing a power of attorney for personal care. However, the good news is that in Ontario, you don't have to have a power of attorney for personal care in order to have a substitute decision maker for healthcare. Every single person in Ontario has an automatic default SDM for healthcare that is outlined in a hierarchy in the Healthcare Consent Act. And we're going to spend some time on this hierarchy on the next slide. This is the hierarchy of substitute decision makers as outlined in the Healthcare Consent Act. If I end up in hospital, unconscious and unable to make my own healthcare decisions, and it's not an emergency, the healthcare providers need to figure out who my highest ranking substitute decision maker is before they go ahead with treatment, and they're going to use this list. As you can see, the top three in yellow are legally appointed SDMs, which means someone has to do something in order to be appointed as an SDM or to appoint an SDM for themselves. Starting at the top of this list, the highest ranking substitute decision maker for healthcare is a court-appointed guardian. This is someone who is appointed by the court to be your SDM. This is a relatively rare circumstance as it is a lengthy and expensive process. You will need to hire a lawyer and go to the Ontario Superior Court to try to get guardianship over a person who has already become incapable. The highest ranking legally appointed SDM is the person or people you have named in your power of attorney for personal care document. You can name more than one person in your power of attorney, and if you do so, you can name them so they always have to make decisions together, which is called jointly, or you can name them so they can make decisions either together or separately, which is called jointly and severally. Something to consider if you are naming multiple people jointly. The healthcare providers must contact each person you have named, explain the situation to them, and hope that they all agree on your treatment. Having multiple people named jointly can possibly increase the risk of conflict and disagreement, as well as delay treatment, as the healthcare providers must spend time contacting all joint decision makers. If you have named multiple decision makers so that they can make decisions severally or separately, this means the healthcare providers only need to contact one of them in order to get consent. While this does not eliminate the risk of conflict, it could reduce it, as well as reduce the delay in treatment, as only one person's consent is needed. It may also be a good idea to name alternates or backups in your power of attorney document, in case the primary SDM cannot act. For example, you can say, I want Joe to be my primary SDM. However, if he is unavailable, unwilling, or incapable, then go to Mary, then go to Pat. Also, while you don't need to have a lawyer do your power of attorney for personal care for you, they may be able to answer your specific questions and provide you with advice. The third type of legally appointed SDM is a representative appointed by the Consent and Capacity Board. This is another application, but this time not to a court, it's a tribunal. An example of this could be, imagine 85-year-old Betty and she is in hospital unable to make her own healthcare decisions. Betty has nobody on the hierarchy except the public guardian and trustee as the last resort. Betty's neighbor, who has known Betty for years, could apply to the Consent and Capacity Board to be Betty's SDM for healthcare. This is just one example that could occur to be a representative for healthcare. If you have not taken any of the legal steps above, that's okay, because in Ontario, everyone has an automatic default substitute decision maker. The following 5 SDMs in green are your automatic family member SDMs. The highest ranking family member SDM is your spouse or partner. Spouse or partner means same sex or different sex, by legal marriage or by common law. You must be living together for at least 1 year in order to be deemed common law for this piece of legislation. People can also be partners if they have lived together for at least 1 year and have a close personal relationship that is of primary importance in both people's lives. This can include friends who have lived together for at least 1 year in a non-romantic relationship and have a special family-like relationship. 2 people are not spouses if there has been a relationship breakdown and they live separate and apart as a result of this breakdown. The next level is parent or children. This includes all of your adult children and your parents. One thing to note about this hierarchy is that if there are multiple people on any of the levels, they are all equally ranking SDMs if they meet the criteria. For example, if you have 5 adult children and 2 living capable parents, all 7 are your SDMs jointly if they meet the other criteria. The next level is a parent who only has visiting access to their children. The parent with full custody outranks the parent with only right of access. Siblings includes all of your brothers and sisters. And finally, the last automatic family member SDM is any other relative by blood, marriage, or adoption. By the time healthcare providers get to this level, they are looking for anyone related to you somehow. This is where cousins, nieces, nephews, grandparents, grandchildren, in-laws, etc. come in. Finally, if you do not have a legally appointed SDM or any family member SDMs, the public guardian and trustee will become your SDM for healthcare. This is a division of the Government of Ontario that specializes in making healthcare decisions for people who have no other SDM. The public guardian will also become the SDM if there are equally ranking SDMs who cannot agree on the decision. For example, say mom is in the hospital, unable to make her own healthcare decisions. She has 4 adult children who are her automatic family member SDMs. 3 of them say yes to the treatment, but 1 says no. Healthcare providers will try to work with the family to try to reach an agreement, but if they cannot, the healthcare providers will then call the public guardian and trustee and say, I have a patient here whose equally ranking SDMs cannot agree on the decision for her. the public guardian and trustee then becomes the SDM for mom for that decision. In addition to being the highest ranking SDM on the hierarchy, SDMs need to meet all of the following criteria. Your SDM needs to be capable themselves. This means if the healthcare provider offering you the treatment believes you are incapable of making your own decisions and turns to your SDM, they are also determining if your SDM has capacity. If your SDM does not have the mental capacity to make your healthcare decision for you, the healthcare provider will then turn to the next person or people on the hierarchy. Next, a person only needs to be 16 years old to make healthcare decisions for another person. This is different than making financial decisions where the age is 18. Let's look at an example. Let's imagine Justin, 17 years old, is his father's automatic substitute decision maker for healthcare. Justin's parents are divorced and his dad does not have a power of attorney for personal care, and Justin falls next on the list as he is over the age of 16. Justin's dad has had a lengthy illness that eventually made him mentally incapable of making his own decisions. Justin finally had to make the very difficult decision to remove his own father from life support. However, his dad gave him a great gift as he had many conversations with Justin, saying things like, "Justin, if I ever get to this point, please let me go. If I'm no longer able to do X, Y, or Z, please let me go." So that when Justin had to make this really difficult decision, he knew he was making the correct one as he knew that's what his father would want. Next, there cannot be a court order or a separation agreement against a substitute decision maker. Your substitute decision maker must also be available. This means in person, on the phone, text message, email, Skype, video conference, any way the healthcare provider can get a hold of you in the time frame needed, confirm your identity, explain the situation, you can act as somebody's SDM. For example, you can be in Australia and still act as someone's SDM here in Ontario. Finally, nobody can be forced to be an SDM. This is even true if someone is named in a power of attorney for personal care. You are allowed to refuse to act as an SDM. An example of why someone may refuse is that it may be too emotionally taxing. So what do SDMs actually do? SDMs make health and personal care decisions for you, but only if you do not have the mental capacity to make the decisions for yourself. It's really important to note that your SDM has to make the decisions the way you would have made them if you could speak. In order to do this, they must use your previously expressed wishes. If these conversations have not occurred, they then must act in your best interest. The types of decisions SDMs make fall in three main categories. If the CCAC staff, now the Local Health Integration Network staff, believe that you do not have the mental capacity to make your own decisions to move to long-term care, they will then turn to your substitute decision maker to make the decision for you. Next, SDMs make all healthcare decisions, ranging from small decisions such as changing Advil to Tylenol, to consenting to open heart surgery, to removing somebody from life support, and everything in between. And finally, they make decisions about personal assistance services such as supervision of hygiene, washing, eating, PSW support, etc., while living in a long-term care facility. Contrary to popular belief, you do not need to write your healthcare wishes down for them to be followed. In Ontario, our laws are very different from other provinces and jurisdictions. You can express your wishes in any way you can, verbally, in writing, in a video, using a bliss board, etc. The law in Ontario allows for people to change their minds. If you have changed your mind about a certain wish, it is really important to share that with your SDM, as they have to use your most recent wishes to make decisions for you. This is true even if you originally wrote down your wish but then changed your mind verbally. Advanced care planning is not only for those who are near the end of their life. Accidents and illnesses can happen at any time, and healthcare decisions are needed in situations where death is not going to occur. And finally, many people believe that we have advance directives here in Ontario, where you write down health care directions and your doctor follows them. We do not have advance directives here. in that we express our wishes to our substitute decision maker, who will then give consent to the healthcare providers in the context of the situation. We also do not have living wills. A living will is just an expression of your wish. So if you have written something down in a document called a living will, please make sure that your substitute decision maker has a copy of it and fully understands your wishes. All of that was step one, determining who will make your healthcare decisions in the event that you are incapable of making them for yourself. Step two, and a very important step that many people either forget to do or actively avoid, is having conversations with your SDM and other loved ones about your wishes, values, and beliefs. What do they need to know about you in order to make decisions the way you would make them if you could talk? Remember, your SDM has to make your healthcare decisions the way you would have made them, so sharing your wishes, values, and beliefs with them in advance can help make these decisions for you. These are conversations worth having. We have gotten a lot of feedback from participants telling us that they really want to have these conversations with their loved ones, but they just don't know how to start it. We have a video to show you that is 6 people who each had to bring up the conversation with their loved ones. In the video, created by the Conversation Project down in the United States, each of the people will explain what it was like for them to bring up the conversation.
So I figured it would be a really easy conversation. My parents were really open to it. They thought it was a good idea, and I could not get myself to start it.
It was really something that made me uneasy, and it was something that I was really uncomfortable with.
So I knew that I should have it, and somehow I think found every reason not to have it.
And I wasn't ready to think about what does it mean that my dad's going to pass away at some point, and how do we deal with that.
And I never thought that I would have to make decisions like this for my mom.
The conversation's a process. It's not a one-time thing. At least I don't see it as a one-time thing. I think it's nice to revisit periodically.
So instead of having the conversation with my family, I did end up having the conversation with several people, several of my friends from a similar cultural background.
So finally, we went for a hike, and we were supposed to have the conversation at dinner. That didn't happen, and then we went home. We still hadn't had the conversation, and finally my dad said, I thought we were going to have a conversation. So that's how it started.
And suddenly I realized in the moment I needed to become very, very, very quiet. And my mom needed to become very, very, very loud. And I started to just listen in a very, very present way to every single thing that she had to say. And then suddenly I started to know what questions to ask. And they weren't clinical questions. It was like, at what point, Mom, do you want me to step in and help make decisions for your life? And she said to me, well, at the point at which I can't sit down and pray with you kids. And that's really poignant. That's not making a decision about a ventilator. That's not making a do not resuscitate decision. That's something very, very simple. And all I could say to her is, yes, Mom, I will do that for you.
Because I think that the human thing is to feel like, I don't want to play God. I'm not in a position to play God and make a decision about someone's life or death.
My sister and I had very different views about what we should be doing. And in our conversations, it wasn't about what I wanted or what my sister wanted. It was about what my dad wanted, and now what my mom will want for her care. What was important for my dad was that he be at home with his family. He did not want to be in the hospital while he was really ill. And it turned out that he wanted to die at home, and we were able to do that for him.
I think we really talked about the spirit of what is life to you and what does it mean. And I think my mom, the most powerful thing she said was, you just need to know to tell the care professionals who are taking care of me or him who we are when we're not in a hospital bed. And if they know that, I have no doubt that you'll be able to have a conversation with them about what is the right kind of treatment.
I wish I could have sort of looked my father in the eyes and had that conversation. But I think that what most of us end up doing is just the best we can under really, really difficult circumstances.
You know, I have a son, and then I'm going to have the other talk at some point in his life. And it's like, yeah, you're going to have these talks throughout your life that are just uncomfortable. But if everyone is aware that they have to have that talk and can talk about it, you know, it makes it easier.
I think it made us closer because we were able to talk about and emotionally deal with how we felt. I could tell my dad, I love you, and I don't want to talk about this, but we need to talk about it. And we got to respect each other for that.
And now, knowing how comfortable my mom is, and it only came from that conversation, we're much more comfortable that it's just another stage in life, and it will be just fine.
Here are some examples of how you can bring up these conversations. Remember, there are lots of ways to bring it up. These are just a few ideas. I need your help with something. I was thinking about what happened to Grandma, and it made me realize. I was at a workshop today, and I'd like to share some information I learned with you. I just filled out a booklet about myself, and I would like to share it with you. Now that you've brought the conversation up, you need something to talk about. The next few slides have some concrete examples of what to talk about, and you'll notice that they don't have to be dark and dreary conversations. I'm not sure if you've read the book called Being Mortal by Dr. Atul Gawande. Dr. Gawande is a surgeon in the US who is trying to shift the conversation from talking about medical interventions to more about who you are as a person. One of his patients said to him, "I'm willing to undergo almost anything, as long as I can still watch football on television and eat chocolate ice cream." Now, at first glance, this seems totally useless for helping make serious healthcare decisions for someone else, but it is actually very helpful because this man's SDMs can now ask the doctors, "If Dad has this surgery, will it allow him to eat chocolate ice cream and watch football on television?" If the answer is no, they may choose not to do the treatment because Dad has indicated that this is what is important to him. Here are some examples of what your SDM may benefit from knowing about you. Everyone is different, which is why it's so important to have these conversations. For example, what are your football and ice cream must-haves? What 3 non-medical facts should your doctor know about you? How would you describe yourself to someone who didn't know you? What fears do you have about your health? What habits or hobbies make your life worth living? What is a good day for you? What matters the most about living? And finally, do you want your doctors to focus on maximizing the quantity or quality of your life? Now, I know that the term quality of life is very abstract, and people often have a hard time with it. But this quote from a doctor who was in our region a few months ago sums it up really nicely. Quality of life is hard to define, but we sure do know when we don't have it. All of us can think of a time when the quality of our life was not acceptable to us. Think about that time and what it was about the situation that wasn't acceptable, and share that information with your SDM. This last video exemplifies how people's wishes are very personal. Some people want everything medically possible done to extend their lives, while others choose quality of life rather than length of life. Again, this video was created by the Conversation Project.
Doctors and hospitals really aren't what we call conversation ready because we ourselves have so medicalized everything that I'm seeing for this patient. What's the dose of this medicine? What's the chemotherapy or not? With this test or not? That we ourselves don't actually often have the experience, the practice, the support that we need to sit down with a patient as a human being, understand what's important to them as a human being, and make sure that that's always at the center of every medical plan. I was asked to see Thelma Botello. All that I knew was she was a 92-year-old woman who had severe vascular circulation problems in her leg, causing her lots of problems, for which there wasn't going to be any effective treatment that they could offer except amputation, which she just refused. She wasn't going to have that done. And so they said she didn't have that long to live, and so they wanted me to come by and maybe talk to her about hospice kind of options.
What I remember, I guess most strikingly, was that Dr. Farrow asked her, what would be a good day for you?
And so I sat down on the bed. I said, getting to know you some as a person will help me figure out how I can best help you.
And it's such a simple question. What would be a good day for you? What do you like to do? These things that I don't feel like I have time, honestly, on a daily basis when I'm seeing patients, when I'm on call, to ask these little things.
In whatever time there is ahead for you, how can we make that as good as it possibly can be for you? singing is what made it a good day.
But it didn't take that long to find out that this is what was important to her.
I said, when was the last time that you sang? And she just sort of said, I haven't sung in a long time. I don't sing anymore. I said, why not? And she kind of looked at me and I said, how about singing me a song?
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I say to myself, what do you say, darling? What a wonderful world. Somebody, where's the drummer?
I see skies of blue.
I see skies of blue.
Clouds of white.
Clouds of white.
The bright, blessed,
The bright,
days,
blessed sun. And the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Pop, 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 pop. Oh, yeah.
And it made such a huge difference in her day.
The music was right there as vividly as it had ever been, and every time her voice started to sing, you could just see her eyes getting younger, her face getting younger, and a kind of human joy returning.
There are many benefits to advanced care planning, one of which is the significant reduction in stress, second-guessing, and depression for the substitute decision maker. For example, if an SDM makes a serious health decision that results in the person's death, if they've had these conversations beforehand, they would feel more confident in the decision they made. They would be able to say, this is what Mom would have wanted if she could talk. Just like our young 17-year-old friend Justin I told you about earlier. Also, speaking with your SDM about your wishes and about what's important to you allows your voice to be heard even when you can't speak. It allows us to retain our autonomy and independence even when we can't make these decisions for ourselves. So what's next? I would encourage you to do the following things. First, identify your substitute decision maker by either confirming the person who is highest on the hierarchy or by doing your power of attorney for personal care. Next, I would encourage you to complete an SDM card and keep it in your wallet. Our project has created substitute decision-making cards that you can keep with your health card. Finally, I would encourage you to have conversations with your SDM and other loved ones about what's important to you, so that if they have to step into your shoes and make decisions for you, they can do so the way you would have made them if you could talk. For more information and resources about advanced care planning and healthcare consent in Ontario, please contact us or visit our website at acpww.ca.